welcome to Outcomes and Actions, developing and writing outcome statements and action steps for inclusive services and supports. My name is Scott Marks, Community Opportunities Director for the Ohio Association of County Boards, and we're very happy to have you here with us today for this presentation. Just a quick note, at the time that this is being recorded, it is February of 2017, and we have just completed our first round of regional trainings on this very topic of outcomes and action steps. So this presentation here is a very condensed version of the 3-hour training that we've been doing in person. So we really hope that the material here is helpful for you today, but if you do want to hear more, know more about this topic, we're looking to schedule more of the in-person 3-hour version of this training here in the future. All right, so let's get started. So if you're anything like me, you often find yourself asking, why am I here? What am I trying to accomplish? So if you are asking the questions of why and what, then you are already off to a great start as far as this presentation is concerned, because we're going to be talking a lot about the why and what of services and supports. Specifically, why someone would be wanting and needing to receive a service and what they're hoping to accomplish out of that service, and how the services and supports that we can provide will help someone achieve their goals. And that is really how we look at developing outcomes and the action steps and services that drive off of them. So we'll go through really the elements of the presentation here today, and we'll be starting with writing outcome statements. This is going to be a pretty simple, straightforward kind of 101 on how to write outcome statements that are person-centered, based on discovery, and really get to the heart of what someone would be trying to accomplish and how the services that we may be able to offer can really help someone move towards accomplishing their outcomes. And we talk about this, it's especially important when thinking about the new adult day services and employment services that are going to be coming into effect in April 1st of 2017. It's important to note that all adult day services and vocab services will need an outcome that justifies that service. Vocab services will need an outcome focusing on an eventual competitive employment goal and movement on the place on the path to community employment. And adult day services will need an outcome relating to independence, relationship building, community membership, self-advocacy, or self-direction. Just a quick note, I want to give a link to a brown bag presentation that DODD had done some time back. And this really is a great in-depth presentation on developing outcome statements and really having those person-centered conversations that lead to great outcomes. I think that this goes into much more detail as far as the outcome steps portion that we'll be going through today. So if you feel so inclined, you can stop right here, click on this link, go check out this presentation, and then come back to us for the rest of the show here. Or maybe if you're very interested in the material you hear in this presentation, you'll go ahead and watch this afterwards. So that's outcome statements. That'll be the first part of today. Then we'll be moving on to how we develop action steps off of those outcome statements. And the action steps are really the part that designate what services are going to be provided and how we can use outcomes to provide and coordinate services that are intentional, purposeful, meaningful, and really help someone achieve those outcomes. Then we're going to move into talking about how outcomes can drive experiences and what kind of activities, experiences really will help someone in achieving those outcomes. And we're going to put a particular focus on community-based services and how we can use those outcomes to coordinate community-based services leading to great outcomes. Then we're going to close out the presentation and talk about employment outcomes and really all kinds of employment outcomes that would lead to career planning services, vocab services, and community employment. And really the differences between each of those, and really how we use outcomes and determine someone's place on the path to community employment to drive what kind of employment services someone would require to lead to their established outcomes. So I will be joined today by Tom Rickles of Excel and the Ohio Waiver Network, who's going to do really the first half of the presentation on outcomes and action steps. And they'll also be joined by a number of members of the Ohio Self-Determination Association, OSDA. I had the pleasure of interviewing a number of OSDA members a few months back, and we're going to hear clips from those interviews of people talking about the things they want to accomplish, the goals and outcomes that they are looking for in their lives, and we're really going to try to tie that all together, hearing about the goals, the things that they want to achieve, and use those clips to develop some outcome statements. So without any further ado, then I'm going to turn it over to Anne, who is an OSDA member and Project STIR trainer, and she's going to give us some words of wisdom to kick off the presentation here today. All right, here's Anne.
To me, each individual is like a gift, and until someone helps you unwrap the things and the talents that you're good at and shows you different direction in your life that you never could see the way to go.
Yeah.
And until someone took the time to help unwrap the gifts that you're good at,
Yeah.
then you'll always stay here instead of blooming and you're letting your roots run and the wind blow. And a lot of individuals don't have that opportunity. They might not have a parent, they might not have parents or anyone to help them, show them, or let them try. Because if you never made a mistake, how do you know if you ever made a mistake if you never was allowed to try?
Yep. I'd like to thank Anne for those words, which I think are a really great way to get this presentation started, and we want to really always think about that, return to those themes of exploring people's gifts and allowing people to have new experiences that help them achieve their goals and dreams as we look at outcomes and action steps. So I'm going to turn it over now to Tom Rickles, who's going to talk about outcome statements, action steps, services, and how providers can implement those action steps into driving the services that they will provide. So here is Tom.
Today we're going to have some thoughts about outcomes. Outcomes have been a big topic in the DD field, and they support meaningful life experiences leading to growth and empowerment. Some of the purpose that we're going to look at today about outcomes is to develop meaningful outcomes, especially for the new adult day support and vocational habilitation rules, to support a more unified vision of the planning and implementation of ISP outcomes in Ohio, to enhance the delivery of supports that are inclusive, community-based, and lead to positive growth for people with developmental disabilities in Ohio. And outcomes should be the way you want your life to be, so keep it simple. Albert Einstein also said, anyone who has never made a mistake has never tried anything new. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Be afraid to not learn from the mistakes you make. Outcomes should also be generally measurable, help to build a life, and to justify the funding. In the new rules, Adult Day Support, the expected outcome of Adult Day Support is development of skills that lead to greater independence, community membership, relationship building, self-direction, and self-advocacy. In the new rules for vocational habilitation, the expected outcome of vocational habilitation is the advancement of an individual in his or her path to community employment in accordance with OACB Rule 51232-2-05 and the individual's achievement of competitive integrated employment in a job well matched to the individual's interests, strengths, priorities, and abilities. They should be simple, focus on simple, straightforward, and easy to understand. Outcome statements should then be followed by measurable action steps, and outcome statements should fall under life domains or categories, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. Many of you work with Jean Toller, a consultant out of Oregon, and when Jean worked, she came with this outcome statement. Jean will increase her fitness levels, the what, so that she can better enjoy retirement, the why. Now the action steps. Jean will increase her fitness levels, the what, so that she can better enjoy retirement, why. And then her action steps were to work with a personal trainer 2 times a week, do high energy cardio workout 2 times a week, go on a 3-mile walk 5 times a week, reduce added sugars, get 8 hours of sleep at night, and reduce travel for work. and that can be awful hard for a consultant. A note on the whys. They can include phrases such as so that, in order to, for the purpose of. So who can help? Each action step then needs the designated type of service and provider. Services must be driven by action steps, not the other way around. So we'll go back to our example. How we turn the action steps into service and supports is we'll work with a personal trainer 2 times per week at the day service, do high energy cardio workout 2 times per week, day or residential service, go on a 3-mile walk 5 times per week, residential, reduce added sugars at both places, get 8 hours of sleep, residential, and reduce travel for work, both day and residential. Now, domains, areas, and categories. Helpful to consider different life domains in order to develop meaningful outcomes. Some of the domains could include health and wellness, social relationships, dreams and interests, independence, interdependence, fun, recreation, home and homemaking, community engagement, employment and career. So let's pull it all together. The life domain is health and wellness. We've already read the outcome statement with the what and the why, and each of the action steps. And so now you have an outcome with action steps that could be included in your ISP. Further considerations. Not all life domains need an outcome or service. Generally consider no more than 3 or 4 outcomes per ISP. You have to think about this in a day program. If you have 1 staff and 12 people and you have 4 outcomes per person, they're documenting on 48 outcomes per day. If you divide it in a 5-hour day, that comes out to about 6 to 8 minutes per outcome that they will be documenting on. Every 6 or 8 minutes they'll be documenting. So when considering the measurability of an outcome statement, you can ask the person, what does progress look like to you? Skill development should likely not be included in an outcome statement, and outcomes should balance the important to and the important fors. From action steps to implementation. Action steps should be clear and specific enough to give provider direction as to exactly what needs to be done. Action steps should be specific but not so prescriptive to which the provider has no flexibility in implementation and or the plan needs to be constantly updated when details change. The provider should be able to take an action step and develop the specific implementation strategy. Again, let's go back to our example. Gene will work with a personal trainer 2 times per week. That's very clear, it's specific. Now, when we implement that from the provider standpoint, Gene's staff will take her to Planet Fitness, where she'll work with Joe, the personal trainer, on Monday and Wednesday at 2 p.m. That gives enough information for the provider to do that. All right, just saying, it all made sense to me when I thought about the fact that as a provider, I wanted to open a new day hab, and that was really my outcome. And why did I want to open a new day hab? Maybe I was a money-grubbing provider. Maybe I had 10 people on a waiting list that already wanted services, and I was at capacity in my other place. Yes, I do go in the community. And there could have been several other reasons for that. But it was that simple. I want to do a day hab. These are the steps I have to take. I have to locate a place. I have to make sure zoning's okay. I have to make sure I have staff trained and ready to go. And all things like that were all part of that outcome. An outcome without a why that still makes sense. This is an outcome we actually use in Stark County, in that Jody will interact with the iPad for color choice, FaceTime, and other interesting identification and apps. The action step is Jody will FaceTime with her mom 4 times per week. And this was very important to both her mom and Jody. And with the help of Scott and Mark, Scott added a beautiful why to this thing. Jody will learn to use the iPad and apps so that she can increase her ability to use technology for communication and fun. And if you look at that, that's actually a better and more general outcome statement. The action step can still be the same. Just want to thank you all for taking the time with me. Relax just like Olivia. You can do it.
So thanks, Tom. And just to kind of wrap that all up, as far as outcome statements are concerned, again, we really want to develop those statements with that what and that why clearly in mind. The what really being the clear expectation of the result of the service, focused on what will be different for someone as a result of the supports that they receive. And we always really want to constantly come back to that why. Why is this important to someone? Why would someone want that support? This is that reason this outcome is important to the person receiving support. Why should be person-centered, individually driven, and based on continuing conversation, dialogue, and discovery, and always, again, balancing that important to and important for the person. All right, so now to help illustrate these concepts, I'm going to play a clip from an interview I did with Ty from Logan County, who is a strong advocate, OSDA member, who has some very specific goals in mind for her future that she thinks will help in her advocacy work. All right, so here's Ty.
Just organizational skills.
Okay. So can you talk a little bit, why do you think that getting some organizational skills would help you?
It would help me be more efficient in my self-advocacy.
So thanks, Ty. And so if we take Ty's statement and we look at it based on what we've heard already from Tom, we could say a good possible outcome statement for Ty would be Ty will be more organized so she can be more efficient in her advocacy. Pretty straightforward, and we're using a lot of, the words that Ty said herself. That was basically her last statement there. She wanted to be able to be more efficient, and she thought that having organizational skills would help her do that. One quick note here, we put as the outcome statement that Ty will be more organized. Not necessarily that Ty will learn organizational skills or she will receive instruction in organizational skills. Because again, we want the outcome statement to be what will be different in someone's life as a result of the services and supports they receive. So what will be different, the change that will be made, the growth that will be made is that Ty will be more organized so she can be more efficient in her advocacy. That way we know if this outcome has been achieved. If the outcome is just learning organizational skills, well, Ty can keep learning organizational skills her whole life, and we'll never know if that outcome has actually been achieved. But this way we can actually ask and say, Ty, do you feel that you're more organized now? Do you feel you're more efficient in your work? And if the case is yes, then we've achieved that outcome, and then we can move on and see what else Ty is interested and wanting to achieve in her life, and really look at some further outcomes to develop even further growth. Next, I want to hear from Anna, who is a self-described maintenance woman. And the reason I think that this clip is so important is we get a lot of questions about the role of natural supports, friends and family, coworkers, other people, and how that can play into an ISP and really support outcomes. You'll hear in the case of Anna here, what was very important to her was being able to help with her boyfriend and her boyfriend's family who manage rental properties. So there were a lot of skills that she needed to learn, a lot of things that she needed to pick up in order to be able to do that. But a lot of that was able to be achieved through the support she received from her own friends and family. And so we'll hear her story here of how she learned to be a maintenance woman. And really that goes to, if her goal, let's say her outcome was Anna will be a maintenance woman so she can help out with the rental properties that her boyfriend and boyfriend's family manage, then we know that several of those action steps don't necessarily need to be paid services. They can be provided by the people who are naturally in Anna's life. So here we go. Let's hear a little bit from Anna.
I'm a maintenance woman. My boyfriend is a landlord. Basically, I'm helping his family clean up properties after they're done. I've recently learned how to do flooring, hardwood flooring. I've recently learned how to mud walls. I know how to paint. I've known how to do that for a long time.
Yeah.
I'm painting for them now. Basically, do everything in maintenance. I've learned how to put toilets back together.
Yeah.
And take them apart without getting a big mess.
Yeah.
My boyfriend, he does basically all the electricity and everything by himself, so he's teaching me how to. That way, if I would run into things at his property and he would be at work at another job, I would be able to help him by fixing it myself.
So I want to thank Ty and Anna both for sharing that with us. I think that was very helpful in a couple of ways, again, in really illustrating some of the concepts we've already talked about here today. So next I want to move on, talk about how outcomes can drive experiences and really how we can use those person-centered, identified outcomes to lead to great services, great experiences, and activities that are naturally occurring out in the community. And really, when we think about community services, how it's very important that we focus on the outcomes and not just be providing community services just for the sake of providing services in the community. I know that there's a lot of great work being done partnering with community organizations, other nonprofits, other charitable groups, or just other clubs, associations out there to make sure that great services are happening in the community. But again, we always really want to be mindful of how those services, how those activities, how those experiences are leading to those outcomes that we've established. So really want to say that, just getting out into the community is a great start, but that's really only the beginning. There are many reasons why community experiences are meaningful, but we must be intentional about them and not just providing them for the sake of providing them. For some people, simply the act of experiencing something new is an important part of their journey and moving towards those outcomes. If we think back to the words from Anne earlier, she said, how do you know if you've ever made a mistake if you've never gotten a chance to try anything new? So again, really the idea of being out in the community, trying new things is vitally important for people to know what's important or what could be important to them as they work towards their outcomes. But for others, there are certain experiences that they know they want to do and we know will be specifically helpful for those outcomes that are already achieved. And thinking of something like volunteering is a great example of an experience or an activity that can work towards a number of different outcomes. So let's look at an example of that. So I've actually heard this from a number of providers that they have developed relationships with food pantries in their community where they're able to take groups out to volunteer at the food pantry, which is really, again, a great experience, but we really want to be thoughtful as to the why. Why would someone want to be volunteering at the food pantry? How is that specifically going to help them achieve their goal, help them achieve that outcome that we've established? So let's take a look at that. So there may be someone who has an outcome that is specifically about volunteering, for which many different volunteer opportunities would be appropriate and successful. This is someone who giving back is important to them, and the opportunity to share their gift of selflessness and connect with other like-minded volunteers is the purpose of the experience itself. So a possible outcome statement for someone like this would be, Scott will volunteer in the community so he can give back and meet new people. Simple, straightforward. We've got the what, which is the volunteering, and the why, which is the giving back and meeting new people. So we know that an experience such as volunteering at the food pantry would be a great community-based experience to help drive towards this outcome of being a volunteer in the community. But again, we know, especially in adult day services, it's very hard to deliver adult day or vocational habilitation services in a one-to-one manner. We want to be able to do this in a group, probably a small group, looking at the new way the rates are going to be structured with an add-on for a group of 4 or less. Let's look at how we could get a group of 4 people, maybe with very different outcomes, that this same experience would be very meaningful, very beneficial for, and very much working towards that outcome. So we've got Scott here. He wants to volunteer, but we want to grow that group. So someone else may have a goal of getting better organized. That sounds like someone we've already heard from today. So thinking back to Ty's outcome, which was Ty will be more organized so she can be more efficient in her advocacy work. So in this case, that same opportunity would be appropriate, as many of the activities in this volunteer experience center around organizing meals, food packages. This would also provide a new experience and opportunity to build relationships as well as supporting that organization goal. So we've really got, everything we want here, which is those relationship building skills, community partnership skills, all working towards that goal of being more organized. So we've got a group of 2 here. We're looking pretty good. We've got Scott and Ty. But again, for this example, we want to have a group of 4 people who all could really benefit from the same experience of volunteering at the food pantry. So let's keep it going. So let's say someone has an outcome such as Tom will be a more skilled worker so he can be more prepared for a job in the community. That to me sounds like a good outcome that would lead to some vocational habilitation services. So this same experience could also be relevant and useful for someone receiving vocab, looking to develop new work skills and explore possible career opportunities, right? We know there are a lot of skills that could be developed in that setting at the food pantry, so this could be possibly a great experience. So now we've built our group up to 3 people, all who could very much benefit from this experience, all working towards that outcome. But let's get one more. So lastly, someone with a competitive employment goal that has to do with working in, let's say, retail or a grocery store could also gain valuable experience with organization, stocking, relationship building, merchandise handling, which would all be necessary skills that support that identified employment choice. So possible outcome statement for someone here will be, Pete will find a retail or grocery job so he can make money in a field he is interested in. So that outcome, you could have several different services there, from career planning to community employment services. But really, this looks good. This is someone who could also be a part of our group, going to that food pantry, learn valuable skills that will work towards that identified career goal of finding a job in either retail or grocery. So the thing we have to think about always, and why we started off this presentation talking about the what and the why, is it is always so important to think about that why. As we just saw here, there are many different experiences that could all be incredibly useful to people with all different kinds of service outcomes. The important thing is that we know why that experience would be important to and for that person, and we're not just delivering that service, we're not just creating that opportunity in the community just because that is what is available to us. We always want to think about that why, think about how we're helping someone achieve their goal through that activity or experience. I hope that was helpful and made sense. And next, I think we're going to move on to looking at employment outcomes. So in talking about employment outcomes, we in our regional trainings have been getting a number of questions about outcomes related to vocational habilitation and career planning. So we're going to go through that, look at a few possible examples of types of outcome statements, and then look at a few different situations, and we're going to hear some more from our partners in OSDA of certain goals that they're working towards and how those would make for great outcome statements, and look at the different places on the path and how all of that leads to the different types of employment services that could be available for someone. So just as a quick return again to the rule around vocational habilitation, which is again the outcome of advancement on the place on the path to community employment in the job that is well matched to someone's strengths, interests, priorities, and abilities. Again, that's what we're talking about with vocational habilitation. It's really about that movement on the path to eventual community employment. So let's take a look at a few examples of what could be good outcome statements for someone who might be receiving vocational habilitation. One would be, Stacy wants to volunteer so she can learn about different workplaces and job skills and figure out what she likes and doesn't. Again, that could be a vocab service. If we go back to our example before of volunteering, Stacy could have been part of our group that we had there before. That volunteering experience would have been meaningful to her, and if she did that in a group, we could look at that as a vocab service. Another one would be, Tom wants to learn about being safe at work and getting along with his coworkers so he can get a job in the community. Another example could be, Courtney wants to start earning a paycheck so she can learn how to manage her money and decide if she likes working. And then last is, I want to find out what jobs I might be good at so I can figure out if I want to work. That sounds like someone who would probably be on place 4 on the path, not really thought a lot about employment, maybe resistant to it, but needs to find out some more to figure out if working is something that they want to pursue. A quick note about this last one, which is written in, an I format. So, which is fine, that's great, but it's important to note that if we're going to use outcome statements that are in the I format, using I instead of a third person verbiage, we want to make sure that we're really using the exact words of that person. We don't want to be putting words into their mouth and saying things that they have not really said themselves. So here's a few, unpossibilities. So things like Kathy will go to ABC Industries 3 days a week. Zach will get 30 hours of vocab a week. Again, these are not outcomes. These are services and locations of services. They don't say at all what will be different in the person's life as a result of the service. They don't take into account anything that would be important to or for that person. They're simply statements about where and how much of a service someone will receive. So it's very important when we think about outcome statements, as much as we can, we want to separate out, for the purpose of writing outcome statements, we want to separate out the services that are available because, if we're really talking about person-centered outcomes, they're supposed to be person-centered based on what the person really wants to get out of whatever kind of support we can receive. And once we've developed a good outcome statement that everyone can agree on and is meaningful for the person, then we look at what kind of services will help lead to that outcome, not the other way around. So these examples would really not be great examples of outcome statements for vocab, but unfortunately I'm sure that these look pretty familiar to many of you listening, watching this presentation right now. So let's go back to some of our friends and partners from OSDA and hear from them, because I think, again, they'll have a few more examples that will be really illustrative and help us come up with some more outcome statements for some employment services. So first we're going to hear from Chad, who has a job, has a pretty good job, but he's looking to advance his career and wants to get a supervisor type of job. So here's Chad.
I'm trying to get a supervisor job at work.
Oh, okay. So you're trying to get a promotion at your work. So what do you think you need to do to get that?
Try to make me a better person. If I get a better person, I would think about it.
A better person. So you think you think if there's any extra training or any stuff that you could do that make you more skilled to be a supervisor as opposed to just a worker?
Yeah.
So have you talked to anybody about that?
Yeah.
And
they've been working with me.
Oh.
Training me on different things.
So I want to thank Chad again for sharing that with us. And I think Chad gives a great example of someone who looks like they would be on place one on our path to employment, right? He has a job, but he wants to get a better job. He wants to get a promotion at his job. So a couple of possible examples of outcome statements for Chad could be Chad will be a supervisor so he can advance in his career. Or maybe Chad will have the management skills he needs so he can be a supervisor at work. Again, we kind of flipped around the what's and the whys there as far as why that would be important to him. And I think, again, I want to note that with the bottom example, we said that Chad will have the management skills. Not that he will learn management skills necessarily, or he will receive education in management skills. We want to know that the outcome of the support will be that Chad will have those skills so that he can be a supervisor at work. Again, a good example of someone that could be on place one, and we can start looking at action steps, services that may be able to help Chad have those skills he needs to become a supervisor at work. And one quick note about Chad's comments, he did say he thought that he felt he needed to be a better person to be a supervisor. Again, we all know that you don't have to necessarily be a good person to be a supervisor. Just have to have those skills. Little joke there. All right, next we will hear from Mark, who has, some pretty clear and strong thoughts about what he wants to get done in life, the kind of job that he wants, and the kind of support he would like to be able to achieve his goal. So let's hear from Mark, and then we'll talk a little bit about that. Here you go, Mark.
I would like to have another job for next summer.
What kind of job would you be interested in?
Panaria. But I would like to do the housekeeping there. I want somebody who can help me doing the job right.
So thanks, Mark. And I think after hearing Mark's statement there, we can say and feel pretty confident that Mark is on place 2 on the path to employment. He clearly wants a job in the community. He knows what kind of job he wants. He even knows where he wants to work. So a couple of outcome statements for Mark could be, Mark will know how to do the job right so we can get a housekeeping job at Panera. So right there we made sure we incorporated a lot of Mark's exact thoughts into there. He said he wanted to work at Panera. He said he wanted someone that could help him do the job right. He wanted to do housekeeping work at Panera. The other option we put here as another possible example would be Mark will have the housekeeping skills to get a job that he wants. The reason we put it that way is because maybe we thought that putting a job at Panera into the outcome statement was maybe a little too specific for the outcome statement, and we didn't want to have to completely rewrite that outcome in case Mark, there was an opening at COSI instead of Panera, as an example. Again, we put that Mark will have those housekeeping skills. Again, that should be the result of the services we're looking at and the why, so we can get that job that he wants. We know Mark wants a job at Panera. We just broadened it out a little bit to say a job that Mark wants in case he does change his mind or there's another opportunity that he is equally attractive to him. And so we would know that with Mark being on place 2, knowing what he wants to do, knowing he wants a job in the community, that we could start developing some pretty clear action steps off of that. We'd probably get a referral to Mark for OOD because he sounds like he, just needs that job training to know how to do the job right and those job placement services that would help him get that job at Panera. And if it's not an OOD, those would be good services in our career planning services as well, which would also include some job placement in that service package as well. All right, so now we're going to hear just a little bit from Melissa, who is interested in learning more about how to take care of kids. So whether that is going back to school or getting some additional training, she's interested in knowing more about childcare. So let's hear from Melissa.
I know a lot about munchkins, but I think going to school to learn about kids, it would also help me understand how to take care of a kid in case I have one in the future.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why I want to go, so that maybe I can learn health, safety, and stuff like that.
So thanks, Melissa. So we know from that Melissa is interested in knowing more about health and safety and in childcare, possibly for a future job in childcare, or really more because she wants to be able to have those skills for if she has a child herself one day, as she said. So we've got a good why there, and we know the what, some further training or education in childcare, so she can take care of a kid herself one day, either whether that's hers or if she were to look into a job in childcare in the future. So again, really always going back to those whys. Why is this important for someone? So, based on your conversations with the person you're supporting, there could be many different whys for employment services. Sometimes employment itself could be a why. This may make perfect sense for someone who is on place 2 on the path to employment, right? So Scott will find and apply for a job so we can get a job in the community. Getting the job is my why. I've made it very clear, or I'm saying me because we say Scott here, but this Scott, this fictional Scott, has made it clear that he wants a job in the community. So that is his why. That's very important to him. Think back to what we heard just a minute ago from Mark, right? It was very important to him to get a job at Panera. So we know that could be a perfectly sufficient why that would justify employment services. But a lot of times there needs to be a greater why as to why someone would want to pursue community employment and receive employment services. So if we're having a conversation with someone and we ask the question, are you interested in community employment? And they just say no, and we end the conversation there, well, then we've really probably done a bit of a disservice to that person and to ourselves if we've not explored that a little more. So there could be many different good reasons why employment services would be useful, beneficial, and help someone towards their outcomes. So let's look at another example here. So again, we're going to say that this Scott is a fictional person and that none of the details here within bear any resemblance to reality. We'll leave it at that. But this Scott is a 35-year-old man who lives with his parents. He loves to go to the movies and play video games. He has never had a community job. And his current specialized employment services, we'll call those vocational habilitation services, he's maybe goes to a workshop, do not afford him enough money to live independently or the ability to go to the movies, to go to GameStop, or to pay for transportation. He has never wanted to work in the community before, but is beginning to recognize he needs more money to do the things that he enjoys. So this Scott sounds like he's someone who is probably on place 4, not interested in work, but maybe could be persuaded, but maybe through some vocab and through some counseling, through some conversations, has realized he's moving more towards that place 3, where he is getting more and more interested in the possibility of a job in the community and learning some skills, learning about some different careers that may be good for him so that he can have money to go to the movies and play video games. Again, bears no resemblance to the Scott that's talking to you right now. So a possible outcome statement could be Scott will acquire work skills and know about possible careers so he can have money to do the things he enjoys, such as going to the movies and buying video games. So we've got, again, the what, which is getting some work skills, knowing about different careers, and the why, which is because this Scott wants to be able to go to the movies and buy video games. It's not necessarily that they want a community job, but they are starting to recognize that to do the things they want to do, working is going to have to be in the picture. So given that example again of acquiring work skills, possible careers, to have money to go to the movies and buy video games, what could be some possible action steps and services? So there could be many, but we're going to give a few examples here of the action steps and then the services that would go along with them. So one could be Scott will work on vocational skills that will help him get a job. That could be clearly a vocab service, right? Next would be Scott will explore careers in the community. That could either be career planning and vocab. We'd probably want to have both listed to be able to authorize for both. Really the difference being if I'm exploring careers in the community one-on-one with a provider, that's probably going to be more of a career planning service. And if I'm doing that in a group, that's probably going to be more of a vocab service. But we want to have that ability to have the flexibility to do both. Another possibility could be Scott will apply for jobs he is interested in. That would be a career planning service. Once I've learned about different careers and I'm ready to start applying for jobs, that would really probably fall into that career planning category. And then lastly, we could say Scott will increase his endurance and self-direction, and that's going to be more of that vocational habilitation type service. And then, once I've explored those careers, once I maybe am more focused on working, maybe the outcome would be more clearly about finding and getting that job that I'm now interested in. So then we'd be looking more into looking at more of those possible individual employment services if I do get that job and need that on-the-job support. So again, we hope that was all helpful and that kind of clears up the idea a bit of how we look at outcome statements that lead to these services, whether they're the new career planning services or our modified vocational habilitation services. We've looked at some examples of how different outcomes can lead to community-based services and how we can even do that in a group in a way that really makes sense for a provider to be taking a group out into the community. So hopefully we've covered many bases here. I'm sure that you still may have many questions. Tom and I's email will appear at the end here, so please feel free to email us with any questions you might have. So we're going to turn it back to a couple more clips from our OSDA friends and partners. And first, we want to hear from Michael, who has some big dreams for people with disabilities in Ohio. So here is Michael.
My goal in the next few years is to get all DDs to care about all dreams of their people with disabilities, not just a few, everybody's. That's my hope.
Thank you, Michael. And lastly, to close us out, just going to hear a quick, like Ann, now we have Dan with more words of wisdom for us and what we feel is a great way to close out this presentation today. So here is Dan.
I like to do art. I like to just keep busy and I like to travel. My dream is just to travel and teach Project STIR and just to enjoy life.
Yeah.
Life is too short to be stuck in the mud and mope around, and just enjoy life.
So thank you, Michael and Dan. That was a great way to go out. And thank you all so much for listening, watching this presentation today. Here's our information right here. I'm Scott at smarks@oacbdd.org. Tom can be reached at tom@xxl.net. And we really appreciate you taking the time to listen to watch this presentation. We really hope that it was useful for you. Please feel free to email us with any questions or comments. And we really hope to and look forward to seeing you out at the regional longer version of this presentation. All right, thank you and have a great day.